Sounds good.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar and thank you for joining this session, Emotional Intelligence for Workplace Effectiveness, organized by SMR HR Group Sanjan Berhad. We would like to thank David Cory for agreeing to conduct this session for us. David is the founder of Emotional Intelligence Training Company from Vancouver, Canada. The company has completed the design of an emotional skill development course for an entire nation. David has been invited to speak in many countries, including Brunei, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and apparently he got chased by an elephant in Zambia. David has also spoken at national and international conferences, including the Nexus EQ conference at Harvard Medical School and Asia HRD Congress in Kuala Lumpur. Once again, we would like to thank David for taking the time to conduct the session for us. David, the floor is yours. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And thank you, Vinesh, and thank you, Dr. Palin, and thank you, Subra, and everyone from SMR. It's been a pleasure to work with you over the years, and it's great to be back here once again. It's great to be with all of you. So welcome to this session on emotional intelligence and workplace effectiveness. And emotional intelligence is one of those fascinating subjects that a lot of people think they know what it is, and as it turns out, they think that it's being kind or it's being nice to others, and it partly is, but it's much more than that. And so we have an opportunity to explore a bit of that today. But before we get started, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about you all on the call right now. And so to do that, we're going to ask you to come up with one word to describe you today. And I want you to type it into the chat box, but I don't want you to press enter and then we're going to all do it at the same time. So get your one word to describe you right now in this moment, type it into the chat box, and then we're all going to hit enter at the same time. You should have that word. You should be typing it out in the chat box. You should find the chat box, first of all, if you haven't found it already, and type your one word. And then on the count of 3, we will all hit enter at the same time. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Hit enter. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at what we've got here. So we've got happy, we've got busy, we've got happy, we've got awesome, happy, grateful, firm, that's interesting, helpful, optimistic, awesome, messy, excited, thankful, versatile, work, happy, stressed, fulfillment, curious, energetic. Good morning to all. So someone didn't quite get the instructions, which was one word, and gave us 4 words, actually. Then we've got happy, awesome, optimistic, great, optimistic, reserved, committed, productive, great, responsible. So thank you, everyone. That's fantastic. It's great to hear from everybody and check in that way. Now let's dive right in and talk about what is this emotional intelligence all about. And so many wonderful things are made in Malaysia, as you all know. I don't have to tell you that. You have incredible technology skills and manufacturing and all these wonderful all this wonderful technology. Tom Peters in 1983, he wrote this book, In Search of Excellence, and in it he talked about organizational effectiveness, and he's a popular leadership guru, if you will, and someone who is much thought of in leadership circles. And he travels around and talks a lot about leadership and leadership skills. And he said one time, success in business today is 15% technology and 85% emotional intelligence. And that's an interesting thing to think about. If you think about that for a moment, why would he say such a thing? And the reason is that you can have wonderful technology, you can have brilliant technology that solves a huge problem in the world, addresses many issues. But if you don't have someone to lead a team of people, to get the investors required to invest in that project, and to build a prototype, people working together effectively to build a prototype, and ultimately sell the idea to industry, then you don't have a business. So that's kind of interesting. So if business is about leadership, it's about customer service, it's about sales, it's about team effectiveness, then all of those are individual people who have the ability to work with and deal with other people, all of which is emotional. And so that's interesting. So let's carry on and take a look at some of the companies worldwide that are implementing emotional intelligence programming. So we've got such companies as Saudi Aramco, thinking of some of the ones that you might recognize, Philips Electronics. We've got Autodesk, the makers of AutoCAD software in Silicon Valley, and of course now Google, Nike, and Amazon are over on the far right because these are not directly my clients. The others, all on the left side, right up to Google, Nike, and Amazon, are all clients of mine that I have design programs, leadership development programs for. I have taught classes in, I have coached senior executives, but Google, Nike, and Amazon have all based their leadership development programs on the model that I'm going to introduce to you today. And so I think that gives this model a great deal of credibility. And why would they do that? Well, the World Economic Forum identified emotional intelligence as one of the top 10 employment skills for 2020, and suggested that employees are going to have to learn how to apply their emotional intelligence skills more than ever starting in 2020. Okay, so here's an exercise that we do in our leadership workshops and in our in many other kinds and types of workshops. And we ask participants to think of, and I'm going to ask you to think of, the best leader that you've ever had and the worst leader that you've ever had. Think about what those people were like. And if we got you into small groups and we had you create flip charts with qualities of those individuals and the impact on you personally, we might come up with lists that look a little bit like this. Now, if we look at these lists here, we're just going to take a quick look at them. And if we looked at the worst lists, you would see such qualities as they were angry, or they had no filter, or they were an unpleasant person. Now, someone had written not a very nice word on there, so I had to cover it up with unpleasant person. So they were a bully, or they didn't listen, or they were self-centered, or they were impatient or condescending. And then you can see the corresponding impacts on the right-hand side of the page. So when someone is angry, it kind of gives you a bit of a negative self-image, makes you feel drained to be around them much of the time. And if someone doesn't have a filter, and they don't hold back and they are very reactive, then that would make you more cautious being around them. If someone was an unpleasant person, it would cause you to be reserved or have anxiety or be unhappy, and it might even cause you to leave the organization. If someone is a bully, you might get more assertive in response, or you might cry. And that's happened. If leaders don't listen, or they are self-centered, you start to doubt yourself. There's no communication. There's fear, stress, poor relationships, no trust, etc. Now, if we look over on the best leader side, then you might have said that person was supportive. And the impact is growth. Imagine you've got a leader who supports you and what you're doing in your career, and then of course you're going to grow and develop as a result. Someone who's humorous. They made work fun and created a fun work environment. Someone who is honest. That increases trust, as we know. Someone who's a visionary. The impact is you can accomplish things. The leader was empathic, felt that person cared, had my back, felt secure. They were authentic. I felt trust, challenged my thinking, and that forced me to stretch. They were respectful. I felt appreciated or valued. They were competent, clear direction and leadership, collaborative, created solutions, caring, inclusive, and fair, empowered, valued, and appreciated. So you can see that people know what the best leadership looks like that they've ever had in their careers, what the best leaders do, how the best leaders are around them. So if we were to have a discussion about this and talk about, do you have more of these worst kind of leaders or more of these best kind of leaders? We might have an interesting discussion. And then to talk about why it is that we have these leaders. There is another interesting discussion. And of course, we can have that discussion after the webinar at any time if you like. Now, what I'd like to do is, again, direct your attention back to the chat box and ask you this question. So which have you had more of in your career? Have you had best or worst? Just go ahead, go over to that chat box and just type in which leader have you had more of in your career, those best leader types or those worst leader types. I'd like to see what your responses would be. So just type them in and just hit enter whenever you feel like you've got your word typed in. Just hit enter. We only have 2 responses. We've got a lot of people on the call and we haven't seen a lot of responses yet. Okay, so here we have them coming in. Let's just see if we can do a quick tally here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Interesting. All right. Okay. Okay. So we've got mostly best, which is excellent, and we've got a couple of worsts there. We've got dictator. Not sure what that means because you can have a pretty inspirational and benevolent and caring dictator. All are good. Okay, not really sure what that means, but so in any case, you've probably had a mix of a bit of both and everything in between. Why is it that people either are are able to demonstrate some of the qualities that we listed here in this list? Well, I think that it has to do with certain skills, certain things that we learn, and certain ways that we are. And so how are we? Are we just born that way, or do we learn? And and when we learn, what do we learn? Well, this whole concept of emotional intelligence is based on this: the fact that these wonderful brains of ours process emotion at the same time as logic and reason. So we have these 2 parts of the brain that are always in operation together, and we don't have a thought without having an emotion that goes along with that thought. The next question is whether we are aware of it or not. And that's where the intelligence about emotions come in, whether we're aware of it, whether we know it, whether we know what it means for us. So it is fascinating to think that we are so equipped with this early detection system, this radar system, that when we walk into a room, we know within a nanosecond whether we should stay in that room, whether it's welcoming, whether it's friendly, or whether we should leave, whether it's not welcoming and we're not wanted there. And when they asked a neuroscientist what one of the most important findings of neuroscience was, in the first couple of decades of neuroscience. Remember, neuroscience is not a very old field of study. He said that one of the most important findings was that the very first perceptual pathway, that is all the perceptions that come in through our 5 senses, the most important first perceptual pathway is whether something, a stimulus, a trigger in our environment, is either a threat or not a threat to us. And if you think more about that, that's interesting because, of course, it keeps us safe from danger. But, what else does it keep us or prevent us from doing? That fear. Perhaps it's the fear of being wrong, the fear of appearing foolish, the fear of whether we're going to be accepted or not. And so if you think about that same system in operation and fast forward to modern day, we don't have that necessity for that fight or flight syndrome. Now it's a matter of having that response to the environment, which is what emotions are, is a response to our environment or stimuli in our environment, and then deciding what to do with it, and being aware of it and allowing allowing us to analyze the data that comes from our emotions. So let's take a look and see what sort of a model would we be looking at if we wanted to look at a model of emotional skills. Well, this model here, the research was started on it in the early 1980s by a fellow named Reuven Bar-On, and he was he is rather, an Israeli American or an American Israeli, and he came up with this model because he was very interested in looking at his clinical psychology patients and wondering about whether, about why it was that some of them who scored very high on IQ tests still struggled with various things socially and interpersonally. And he started looking at what those skills and competencies were, and through a very rigorous scientific process, he came up with these 15 unique emotional skills, each one of which is measured by an assessment tool called the Emotional Quotient Inventory, which is now in its second version. So it's the EQI 2.0, and we're going to look at a segment from that report momentarily. But let's just look at what we have here. First of all, we've got self-perception. So how do you perceive yourself? That is, how do you regard yourself? Do you involve yourself in activities that are fulfilling and meaningful for you? And are you in touch and in tune with your emotions? Self-expression is all about whether you express those emotions that are within you, whether you have a voice in the world, and whether you're able to be assertive and say what you're thinking and what you're feeling and express your opinions to others, and whether you're able to operate independently. And then going around the circle in a clockwise fashion, we come to the interpersonal area. So we develop ourselves first, and then we connect with others, and we enter into relationships, and we have empathy for others, and we have social responsibility. We realize that we're not on this planet for ourselves. That's not going to ever work. We are on this planet to work together, to be responsible for each other socially, and to give of our expertise to others. And then finally, we've got this whole decision-making section, which again is all about that last slide, where we see that we've got these two wonderful parts of our brain, logic and emotion, and they always work together. And so we look at how emotions are involved in your problem-solving process, and whether we can improve your problem solving by decreasing and minimizing things like worry and procrastination. And with reality testing, that's all about unconscious bias and implicit bias. And if we can minimize or reduce the effects of unconscious bias, we can be better at decision making. And finally, impulse control is all about whether we can resist the temptation to take action quickly and and take possibly the easy way out, when really a bit more patience and we can get to a more effective solution to a problem that we're facing. The final area is stress management, and this is because stress is such a huge thing in our world, we don't perform without stress. So how much stress is the right amount of stress for us, and what is too much stress, and how does it push us possibly over the edge? All right, so this is a page out of an emotional quotient inventory report. So the individual who's got these scores here has gone online, and they've responded to a set of 133 statements, each of which has to do with a different, what we call EQ competency. So we've got 15 competencies divided up into 5 composite competencies, and you get a score, and you get a standardized score. So as those of you know who know about psychometrics, most psychometrics use the standard of 100 as the mean and 15 as the standard deviation. So we're looking at scores between 85 and 115, one standard deviation above and below the mean as the typical area, typical scoring area. So anything that's below 85 is a possible concern, and anything that's above 115, we want to ensure that it is used in a positive and effective way, and that it's not overused. So I see a question coming in the chat box, and that's okay, and it's a great question, and I'm going to leave that one for now, and we'll take that up when we get to the Q&A section. Yeah, Vinesh has suggested that you type your question into the Q&A box. So thanks, Vinesh, for keeping people on track in that regard. And so let's just look at this profile here for a moment. This person ended up getting terminated from their senior executive role within a major multinational organization. And I'd started coaching this individual one-to-one and working with him. He was under a lot of pressure from other senior executives in the organization to manage himself well. And let's just look at a couple of scores. So we've got this emotional expression score at 121. It's a very high score. And used effectively, emotional expression really allows people to get to know us and really allows people to know what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and it builds trust. It's a tremendous way to build trust. However, as you probably know, you must express your emotions in the appropriate way. And so when we look down to see what regulates our emotional expression and helps us to express emotions in the most appropriate way, that is impulse control, that is a problematic score in impulse control. So he was very emotionally expressive, but lacking in impulse control. And this is what led to having inappropriate interpersonal relationships in the workplace and lacking in empathy, not really being able to read well how other people were, how he was impacting on other people. And while we were making some progress in our coaching efforts, it was too little too late for this individual. And ultimately he was terminated. And how it happened was I bid him a nice winter holiday at the end of December, only to come back in the new year and find out that they had let him go. What you get a highly detailed report. So this is just one page from it. You get a highly dense textual analysis of these scores based on the how the computer is programmed to read the scores, and it's very useful and helpful in coaching and in helping with employee development. Okay, so here's the question number 3 to type into the chat box there. So get your chat box ready. So what is your EQ? What do you think about your EQ based on just this very quick, brief look at the model that I showed you? You know, how you perceive yourself, how you express yourself, the relationships, the quality of relationships that you have in your life, how you include decision making in your include emotions in your decision making, and how you manage the stress that you're experiencing. I recall that somebody typed in stressed when they're given their one word. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being not good and 10 being excellent, where do you think you are? Okay, so I see a lot of 8s, 5, 7, 6, 3, 7, 8, 7, 7, 7, 7.5. Excellent. All right, great. Yeah, good. Yeah, and this is just a very, very rough, more of a fun thing than anything to think about, you know, where you might score on the EQI if you were to take such an assessment and then get your report. All right, so thank you very much for playing along with that one. Oh, we've got 8.931456. Yeah, that's a good one. That reminds me of that old joke that 86.75% of all statistics are made up on the spot. That's a bit like that. All right, let's carry on and let's take a look at each one of these five composite areas. So, all right, so self-perception, you can see this little guy and you can imagine what his parents might have said to him when he was little. He's fantastic, he's wonderful, he's brilliant, he's great. And then he goes out into the world, and the world can be a bit of a tough place, and so maybe the kids at school told him that they didn't like his haircut, or that he looked funny, or that his shirt was weird, or whatever. And so then now he's got the messages coming from his parents, the messages coming from the world, and he's got to decide which one is accurate, which one am I going to believe. And so people who are able to accept themselves just the way they are, even with all their imperfections and defects, because we all have them. Being human, we are perfectly imperfect, and it's about being able to say, you know what, I'm okay just the way I am, whatever way that happens to be, and have the self-confidence and feel like, you know, you can manage, you can do it, you will face whatever challenge comes along, and you'll be successful. And the evidence of someone who has good self-perception is they have big goals, they do what they love, they feel a sense of fulfillment, and they feel self-assured. So with respect to improving self-perception, it's about looking at some of the beliefs that you have about yourself and wonder about whether they serve you or whether they hold you back. And then maybe challenging some of those beliefs and wondering whether they're still true, even though they might have developed in your younger life. Let's take a quick look at this idea of us human beings being like the proverbial iceberg. Now, I know you don't have a lot of icebergs in Malaysia, but or in and around Malaysia, but you've seen these pictures before, and you know what an iceberg is, and it's about that little bit that's sticking up above the surface, and then below the surface is this huge, practically infinite world. And that's what us human beings. There's what we see, and then there are all of those experiences that we've ever had, all of those emotions, and all of that going on beneath the surface. And so this next part about self-expression is about how much we choose to share from beneath that surface with others. Do we talk about our sadness or our grief, or do we talk about our excitement and our passion for the work that we are doing? Do we talk about how exciting a project is, or do we simply focus on the technology and very emotionlessly getting things done? Because that's not very motivating for others to go that way. So it's important to express our emotions. It's important for others to get to know us so that we can build trust. That's where trust comes from, getting to know people. The more you express what's going on inside, the more people are able to trust you and build great relationships with you. Let's go on to this next audience question. So, how comfortable, again on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being not comfortable at all to 10 being very comfortable, how comfortable are you expressing your emotions at work? Let's see some of the numbers there. Okay, so we got 7, 5, 5, 6, 6, 3, 6, 4, 4, 4, 8, 4, 5, 6, 5. All right, 7, moderate level, 6, 6, 8. Yeah. So, and again, we're evolving as human beings. We're going from the old traditional thinking, which is, you don't share emotions with others. You don't want to open yourself up to harm or to for that information to be used against you. That's very old thinking. Or we don't make friends at work. We just come, we do our work, and then our lives start after work. All of those are very old notions. And so the question is, are you able to be yourself at work? Are you able to let people in? Are you able to be authentic? And when we are, it creates relationships of trust with others, which is critical and important. And it contributes to what we call psychological safety, this idea that it's okay to be able to speak up because leaders have made it a safe place to be, and a safe place to be myself, and a safe place to express my emotions, etc. Let's take a quick look at this area of the interpersonal. So this is all about having meaningful connections with others. What is a meaningful connection? Well, it's a connection of trust, where there's loyalty, commitment, connection, understanding, effective teamwork. So these only ever happen, and connection only happens when we start to share what's beneath our surface. That which is normally hidden, which you don't necessarily see. And so being comfortable and able to talk about what's going on and about how we see things and how we view things and have those honest conversations about what really matters in the workplace, this creates much more effective organizations where people feel free to contribute and give their all. So that's interpersonal decision making. Again, this is all about understanding how critical and important emotions are in using logic versus leaving emotions out. If you've ever heard anyone say, "Let's leave emotions out of this decision," we know what they're saying. They're saying they don't want to be unduly impacted by emotions. However, it's not possible to leave emotions out of it. So let's talk about what the emotions are that are there. Do you have a fear? Is there worry? Is there a concern? Let's talk about all of those things, because those are, once again, important data which we need to take into consideration and include in our decision making. And the evidence is that we come up with excellent solutions. We consider all the options while minimizing unconscious bias, recognizing that all human beings are biased. So what is our bias, and what are our biases, and how are they currently affecting the decisions that we're making? And the more homogeneous our teams and less diverse, then the more we are at more risk of unconscious bias. This is the argument for diversity and inclusion of different perspectives, different kinds and types of people who have different beliefs and different perceptions from our own. That's the way to minimize unconscious bias. And of course, we need to reduce the negative impact on others and unnecessary delays. All right. So we're talking about stress management, and I want you all to take a look at this curve here. This you may recognize as the Yerkes-Dodson stress curve of 1908. I think that's interesting that it was created in 1908. So back in 1908, these professors, Yerkes and Dodson, had this understanding that we human beings don't do anything unless we are stressed. And so if we're in too little stress, we don't do anything. And that's fine and well and good for momentary periods of time, but that's not where we want to stay. So you might think, wow, I'd really like to be in underload. I'd really like to be in too little stress. And so we go on holiday, and maybe, we go to a resort, we lay around by the pool or go to the beach, and we do nothing. But then we start to get bored, and we want to do something. We want to be involved in something. We want to be involved in what is meaningful for us. And so then we get involved in something, and if we keep taking on more and more and more, then eventually we reach fatigue. So we want to be involved in that yellow area, which is optimum stress, but we don't want to be in the orange or the red, which is exhaustion and then ultimately breakdown and burnout. So this is interesting. So if we had a little bit more time, I'd ask you to determine where you all were on the stress curve, and then how might you possibly get back there. So to sum up very quickly, in the 5 areas, how do you perceive yourself, and what do you believe to be true about yourself? Because what you believe to be true about yourself is either supporting you to accomplish your goals in work and in life, or they're standing in your way. They're not serving you. Number 2 is the area of self-expression. Do you have a voice? Are you being known to others? Are you speaking up when that would be an important thing to do? And then number 3, how are your relationships with others? Are they relationships characterized characterized by deep connection and a sense of trust, where you really feel like you know each other because you express yourself to each other. And then we move around to the decision-making area and understand how emotions affect decision-making. And then finally, look at how stressed we are and what do we need to do in order to reduce the stress that we experience. All right, so let's move into questions now, and I can't wait to get at these questions. Vinesh, do you want to read them out? I noticed some people were still typing them into the chat box, but that's okay. We can probably look at both areas. And Vinesh, what's our first question?
Thank you, David. I think your presentation is really good. EQ is really interesting. Thank you for that. The first question we have from Priya, she says, when hiring and promoting people, we often use EQ and competency assessment profile, and in Hardly it is based on EI. Is it due to lack of credible EI assessment tools or awareness of EI? How is EI being used for succession planning and leadership development?
Excellent question, and the answer is that there are many, many tools out there that say that they measure EQ, and so it is about understanding those tools and which one is going to be the best tool for your particular application. The EQI was the first in the world and has the most research behind it. It was first published in 1997. It's one of the only emotional intelligence measurement tools that are profiled in the Burroughs book of mental measurements, which is the Bible of psychometrics, and it has some of the highest correlations with workplace performance of any tools out there. So it's about looking at all the tools and deciding which one is going to be the best one for you and which one it is that you want to work with. And by the way, we hope to offer an EQI certification course. That is so for you to be able to learn how to use the EQI and the EQ360, which is the multi-rater version for senior leadership development. And we're talking with SMR about offering that in partnership, and we're going to make the time a time that would be good for people in Malaysia, because we are 15 hours behind you, and so that can get complicated. All right, next question, Vinesh.
Right. So Kamalia is asking, I wonder if Tom Peters' statement is applicable to Eastern businesses as it would to Western ones.
Yeah, good question, and certainly, while there are cultural differences in the way that things happen in different parts of the world, this model is universally applicable. So self-perception is important in every culture. How you perceive yourself is important in every culture, and how you express yourself, and how you connect with others, and how you include emotions in decision making, and how you manage stress. These are important in every culture on the planet. What differs is how that takes place, how that happens, what anthropologists call display rules. So the way that looks in action and in behavior is the difference. In my experience working in different cultures in the world, they're absolutely different, but all can benefit from considering how to improve in these 15 different skills.
Thank you, David. The next one from Kumran, he says, is emotional intelligence related to developing people's skills? If yes, how do I learn it and how do I do it?
Related to, I missed that, related to?
Related to developing people's skills.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, emotional intelligence is the scientific approach to this idea. What we say when we say people skills, we really mean emotional intelligence. And so this is becoming more and more widespread. There is the Center for the Study of Emotional Intelligence at Yale University. Emotional intelligence is taught in every leading business school in the world, INSEAD, Stanford Graduate School of Business, many more, and so you'll be hearing much more about emotional intelligence, not less. Oh, how
Thank
to
you.
improve? Yeah, how to improve? And I see there's a couple of other questions. You know, how to improve EQ? It's about knowing and understanding your own EQ. That is, you know, working with someone who's got the training and the background, and then the very best way is with a coach, one to one. Our company, we offer assessment so that you know where you are first, and then we offer training so that you can talk with other peers about these concepts, and then we follow that up with one-to-one coaching. So that's the way: is assessment, coach, training, and coaching. Vinesh?
Thank you, David. How can I improve my emotional intelligence for workplace effectiveness when there are so many negativities around me?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you know, what the individual is talking about is leadership. So leadership is about making things better. So if you're not making things better, you're not leading, and you're part of the problem. So leadership is choosing first and foremost to be part of the solution. And so you can choose to be optimistic. You can choose to make a positive impact on others. We can't change other people, and so we never suggest that anyone tries. All we can change is ourselves. So if you change yourself and you become an optimistic, positive person, even in a negative environment, which is challenging you to do that, then that's going to impact on other people around you. And so emotions are contagious, as you know. People catch emotions. What emotions do you want people to catch from you? And you can immunize yourself against the negativity by challenging negativity. And when you see it, when you hear it, when people talk about how bad things are, you can challenge that and talk about, you know, what are the opportunities, what are the positive things that are happening, and refocus people in that area. So that's just skimming the surface of a very deep and broad topic, but that's just the quick answer for now.
Thank you, David. The next question, I like this question. Yuvarajan asks, can high academic intelligence qualifications contribute to high emotional intelligence?
Yes, absolutely. What I dislike and what is a popular myth is that there is IQ and there is EQ, and these are somehow polar opposites from each other, or they don't have a relationship with each other, when they very much do. You know, if you know, you've probably all heard about multiple intelligences, and you hear all about all kinds of different ways of being intelligent. In fact, when you look at how the brain works, there's probably only one intelligence, and it happens to be emotional. So that person with the high IQ, they're in a better position to understand how important emotions are, and to possibly learn and pick up on some of these other ways of being that will improve the way that they connect with others and the way that they manage themselves. So they may be in a better position. But again, anybody can improve wherever you happen to be on the scale, and we're all on this journey of life together, and we can all improve, no matter what.
Thank you, David. We have two questions which is pretty much similar, which Saraswati and Mohammad Zin asked. What is the correlation between emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence?
Yeah, that's a good question, and spiritual intelligence and spirituality is almost, you know, a separate topic and something else again. And if you look at and think about what spirituality actually is, it's something beyond us. And so I see another question. It looks like it's from the same individual. Does religion play a role in EI? And the answer is, in my humble opinion, I don't believe so. So you can be a religious person and have high EI. You can be a non-religious person and have high EI. So again, it's, you know, what are your beliefs, and do your beliefs support you knowing and understanding and perceiving yourself in a positive way, and you know, knowing and understanding others, and interacting and building great relationships with them, and the building of trust and loyalty and commitment and all of those good things. So those are the questions around EI, and if your religion supports that, great, that's fantastic. Any other questions, Vinesh?
We have one interesting one from Dr. Giles. He says, emotional intelligence can sometimes defy data analytic. How do we convince the choice of 85% on decision making, especially on financial decisions?
Yeah, that is a challenge that we frequently get, and people just haven't looked at the research. There's overwhelming research to show that paying attention to and investing in emotional intelligence skills development pays off with bottom line improvements, and we see that across the board globally. So there is nowhere that is not the case. So those people who still have trouble with seeing the connection, they haven't seen the research, and they're operating with old models and thinking very traditionally about the workplace and how work should happen. And so for those people, we just need to show them the research.
Thank you, David, and thank you for being so calm to answer our questions. We've got 3 more questions.
Great.
The next question is by Kamalia. She says, is it important to align our self-perception for different contexts, example in workplace or at home?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Carl Jung wrote about it quite extensively when he talked about the conscious persona and the less conscious persona. So there perhaps are ways that we are when nobody's around and nobody's watching, and that's our less conscious persona. And then we choose to show up in various ways for various circumstances in various groups and settings. And so we probably are a bit different, when we're at home with our families versus when we're at work. But the more aligned those can be, then the more that's about our authenticity. And when we can get to the point where we're very similar wherever we are, and we can be who we authentically are, that's a wonderful way to be. And it builds trust like nothing else. When you know that you are going to be accepted, or it's less important to you that you are accepted no matter how you are, then that's going to lead to peace and serenity and acceptance and a great way to be.
Thank you, David. The next one from Lily, she says, IQ is viewed as a form of success and EQ viewed as weakness. What's your thoughts?
Anybody who views EQ as weakness doesn't know the research, hasn't read the research, and is hanging on to old beliefs. This is traditional and goes back a long way, and it's a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge that leads to those thoughts that EQ is weakness. EQ is far from weakness. EQ is courage. EQ is strength. EQ is self-management. EQ is knowing and understanding others. EQ is giving to others. EQ is contributing and giving back and making the world a better place, and in so making organizations better and creating better work environments that people really want to come to and really want to be in. So we have to challenge those notions and those mythical beliefs of emotions as somehow being weakness and EQ as somehow being weakness. It's far from weakness. It's strength.
Thank you, David. So our final question for today is how to practice EQ effectively and consistently, especially when we have personal problems and at the same time we have to be professional at work.
Absolutely, yes, and so this is about knowing and understanding your environment. That again, those settings that you're going to be showing up in and choosing to show up in, and it's about understanding that this model is universally applicable. So when we have personal problems, it's really important that we talk to people about them, that we don't hold them inside, that we don't bottle up our feelings, that we don't mask them, that we don't try to pretend that they're not there. All of these things are not helpful to us ultimately, and so the only way that we get through this life is together, not individually, not separately, not on our own. It's always with others. And the only way to do that with others is to let them in, is to share with them what's going on, what's happening, and what those problems are that we're going through so that we can get help. Because people have other perceptions. They have other wisdom that we don't have. And so we need to let people in order to do that. So and again, you're not going to walk into the office and start sharing everything with everyone. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying choose those people that you do have a possibility of creating a confidential relationship with, that you can share things in confidence, that you can have friends at work, and then build those relationships out, make them better, and so that you can support each other, and in that way, become more emotionally intelligent. So again, you're not going to change, your whole company, or maybe you're in a position where you have the opportunity to create that kind of psychological safety where people can feel safe to bring up whatever's bothering them, whatever's troubling them, whatever personal problems they're going through, and get support. Because when they get that support, they're going to be a much better employee, a much better team member, much better at whatever it is that their role happens to be. So it's about seeking out ways to improve. And that may start with knowledge. There's lots of great books out there, websites, research, etc. And I'm happy to share that with Vinesh so that he can share that with all of you.
Thank you so much, David. I can't thank you enough for taking your evening to give us this wonderful presentation. I hope we'll be able to work together on a program really soon. So once again, David, thank you so much. And I think we have come to the end of the session.
Thank you, Vinesh. Thanks everyone for coming. Great to have you here. Great to be here.